Hi everyone, it's Nicki here and welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, I'm an author and editor, and on this YouTube channel you'll find videos about books, writing tips, editing tips, obviously a bit about my own releases when I have books out. And one of the things I like to do is give you monthly roundups of the books I've been reading. Now for those of you who follow my channel, you'll know that I've missed a couple of months. I was a little bit obscure about the reasons for that, but I can tell you now that I'm back is because I was going to the UK for 2 months for my sister's wedding and to have Christmas New Year with my family over there. I don't like to advertise my absence from home too much before I go, so for obvious reasons, which is why I was a little bit hazy with the details before, but that's why the videos have been coming a bit late. So what I have to do is catch you up with everything I've read during November and December. Now this would normally be an astronomical task of 24 odd books, but because I was away I tend not to read so much when I'm on holiday. I know a lot of people use that time to read more, but for me it's the opposite. So as it happens, I only have 12 books that I read during those 2 months. So I'm going to tell you a little bit quickly about those now, and then I'll be back on track with my normal end of the month vlogs for January and onwards through the year. So without further ado, let's get talking. So I have here a little list. Now I may be a little bit hazier on details about some of the books than I usually am, partly because I'm just doing this as a catch-up, and partly because in some cases it has been 8 weeks or so since I've read them, so they're not as fresh in my mind as when I do them every 4 weeks. So I have written a few little notes here to help me along based on what I put in the reviews, so let's kick off. One of the books I read was called The House at Riverton by Kate Morton. Now this is a mystery kind of tale, parallel narrative with the past and present, although not too far in the past because our narrator is actually remembering stuff that happened in her youth. This was a 3-star read for me. It's an interesting tale about a mysterious death in an aristocratic family, told mainly, as I said, through flashbacks. The trouble I had with this book, and the reason it only gets 3 stars, is because the modern part of the story seemed a little bit pointless. Yes, it was a device for this woman going back and reflecting on what had happened in the past and telling her story that she'd kept secret for so long. But I found myself skimming through those parts, just wanting to get back to the historical narrative where all the real action was taking place. The other thing that sort of made me mark this a little bit lower was the fact that the character of Grace, one of the main characters, she just seemed really dense at times, and you kind of thought, surely she'd get an inkling of some of the stuff that was going on, which she doesn't seem to notice for ages and ages. So if you like those sort of reads, a sort of cosy mystery in a way, in that this is not sort of a really dark psychological piece, and a bit of historical setting, then you'll probably like it. But for me it was just an average okay read. Sticking with the historical, the next book I read was What You Desire by Adele Klee. This is another 3-star read for me. Basically our hero, who's a rake, is forced to help our heroine in a quest for her missing brother, without giving too much of the story away. Now the problem I had with this book was that it was a real bodice ripper. I mean, historical detail was a sort of byproduct, it wasn't the main focus of the story, particularly in terms of the characterisation. And we're meant to believe the hero is a rake, and yet his actions during the story are actually fairly noble, and he behaves pretty well. So that kind of, so you kind of say, well, why is he being billed as a rake then? Because he never acts that way. Meanwhile, the heroine seems to equate strength with petulance and a high libido. For me, it's just like, for a woman of her time, in her background, you know, well brought up, high-class lady, it just didn't always ring true for me, the way she was acting. So although the idea of the story was great, I just felt that the characterisation let it down. If you're into bodice rippers and you don't care too much about historical accuracy, then by all means you'll enjoy this book. But if you like your history or historical fiction a little more historical, then it's probably not one for you. A complete change now for Atunga by Peter Wood. This is a 4-star read for me. It's sci-fi. I came to this book because I'd actually edited another book for this author, and he sent me a copy of this one, the first one. Although it's actually set in time-wise after the one I edited, which was handy in a way. It's basically 3 friends are involved in this issue with a conflict in the solar system that revolves around AI and this baby dolphin with special powers. sounds bizarre, but it's actually a really imaginative and delightful story. The only reason it gets 4 stars for me and not 5 is because at times I felt the pacing could have done with being a little bit tighter. There was a few drags in the action, and also the 3 friends, though wonderful characters, none of them had any flaws, and which made them a little bit unbelievable at times. You kind of felt that they were too perfect. But if you're into sci-fi with a twist, this is a great one to check out. Next we move on to a book called Vampire for Christmas by Felicity Heaton. 3.5 star read for me. This one is about a demon hunter and a vampire who, though sort of enemies in a way, are forced to work together to bring down another supernatural creature at Christmas, hence the story title. I quite liked this book because there was a good blend of action and romance. It wasn't too skewed one for the other. However, what let it down for me were the underdeveloped characters. You kind of felt that you didn't really get to know them and they didn't go anywhere during the story. I would have liked to have seen this perhaps as a longer piece rather than a novella, so that you had time to get to know their characters and to see them change more during the story. But if you're just into a quick paranormal romance read, it's definitely one to check out. Sticking with Felicity Heaton, we also have Her Dark Angel, a 3-star read for me, so it's slightly lower than the previous book. In this one, a woman calls on an angel who's trapped in hell, which releases him, and he goes off to help her, and of course romance ensues. I loved the concept. I thought the story idea was brilliant. However, the characters were very stereotypical and behaved stereotypically as well, and there was just not a good blend of romance and action. It was a little bit skewed towards the sort of sex romance side for me, so that the story itself seemed to be a bit lacking. But again, if you're a paranormal romance fan who's just into it for the thrills and romantic hijinkses, if you like, then you'll probably enjoy it. And a final one by Felicity Heaton, Covered. This is another 3-star read for me from her. This seems to be about the average for how I feel about her books. They're okay, but they don't really grip me. And again, the story had a great premise, set in a theatre of vampires with their human slaves. Loved the idea, but there was far too much sex over story in this one, really skewed towards just the erotic content. It's fine if that's what you want, but I was looking for a little bit more story. And the ending also let it down for me, because one of their friends made a huge sacrifice for them, and after vaguely mentioning it, they just went back to having sex. And you kind of thought, well, what about the friend? What about what's happened to him, you know? There was no resolution to that, and it felt like they kind of just went, yeah, about this guy's major sacrifice on their behalf. So that makes it a 3-star. Let's move on. Another paranormal one now, but from a different author. This is Baby I'm Howling for You by Christine Warren. This is a 4-star read for me. This is a NetGalley read. It's the first NetGalley read for this section. In fact, I think it will be, yes, the only one, because I was away. I didn't have all the apps and things to download stuff from NetGalley, so this is the only NetGalley one. Basically, it's about a shifter on the run who finds this community of shifters, and then also finds romance with one of them. At the same time, her past is catching up with her, and the town and her new friends have to help her deal with that. Brilliant story idea, really loved it, very enjoyable. This one had a really good balance of the action, the story, and the romance, and the blossoming romance. The romance didn't feel forced, although there was a sort of sense of like the mate idea and inevitability about it. It didn't feel rushed, because both the characters kind of pulled against that for a while and got to know each other first. The characters were really likeable. The only thing that stopped me giving this 5 stars was that the ending, when the resolution finally came, just felt a little bit rushed after the slow build-up. But it's a really good paranormal romance, plenty of action, so if you're looking for one with a good blend of romance and action, this is definitely one to check out. Moving on, and another paranormal romance. That seem to be my predominant reads for November, really, and into December. The Devil in Disguise by Cynthia Eden, and this is another 4-star read for me. Basically, the premise is there's this young woman with powers, and she ends up, she's in trouble basically, and she ends up meeting a guy who is essentially the devil. Although I'm saying that in air quotes because there's a slightly different mythology to this story, and that was the strongest thing for this story actually for me, the mythology. I thought the characters and world building were really well done. They came across well. Again, this one has a really good balance between the action and the romance. There's a little bit of both, so something for everyone. There was a little bit of eye rolling involved with the heroine at times. You just kind of wanted to throttle her once or twice, but on the whole this is a really nicely balanced story, and as I said, just a bit of something for everyone if paranormal romance is your thing. Then we have an LGBT piece, The Devil at the Crossroads by Cornelia Gray. In this one, Logan has made a deal with the devil to be a awesome blues man, but he's kind of let himself down, he's wasted his opportunity, and now it's time for the devil to come and collect, as he thinks, his soul. However, it turns out there's a bit of a twist to the tale. Again, this is a great premise, a great plot idea. I loved the way the twist works, which I won't say too much, I don't want to give it away. The characters are really likeable, and I thought the author managed a really good balance between the current time telling and the flashbacks to the past and how this all began. It worked brilliantly, so as I said, a 4-star read. If you're into LGBT paranormal romance, this is an MM one. Definitely have a look. Moving back to historical fiction. Now I do notice before I carry on that the sun has gone in a bit, so hopefully I'm not going to get too dark on the video, but we'll have to just wing it. Mostly because I've only been back a couple of days, I'm still jet lagged. So I wanted to get this filmed, but I'm still a little bit ditzy, so you'll have to bear with me. And I'll just do the best I can. We'll get back to normal for the end of the month. Anyhow, as I was saying, this story is called The Return of Captain John Emmett, and it's by Elizabeth Spiller, and it is another 4-star read for me. This is kind of a cosy mystery. Our hero has survived World War I, and so did one of his former friends, but that man has now committed supposedly suicide. And his sister has hired our hero, or engaged our hero I should say, it's very unofficial, to find out and have a bit of a snoop what went on, because she can't believe that this would have happened. So it's basically Lawrence goes around and he's discovering truths about things that happened in the war and how that's led to the current situation, and there's several more deaths that occur. So it's very much a cosy mystery. I mean, I've put here not edge of the seat, and it wasn't. And you weren't kind of really worried about the hero or worried about the outcome of the investigation. But it was still a really pleasant tale. Lawrence is a very likeable character. I enjoyed his engagement with the other characters as well. So if you like a sort of light historical mystery tale, then this is one for you. We're coming into the home stretch, 2 to go. So both of these are non-fiction, just for a change from what I've been reading most of the 2 months. The first one is The Seymours of Wolf Hall by David Loades, and this is a 4-star read for me. Until Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies, the Seymours had not figured particularly much in my contemplations. I mean, obviously we know Jane Seymour as Henry VIII's wife, but the rest of the family didn't mean much to me. So this was a really interesting read. The prose is very easygoing, very readable. It's got a lot of great detail and backed up with references, but it's not too stodgy. The only thing I didn't like about it, that made me give it 4 stars instead of 5, is the way the chapters are set out meant that some information gets repeated. And so you do find yourself reading the same thing 2 or 3 times during the book, which you're kind of thinking, oh, I know this already, let's move on. But a really interesting account of the family, both for the generations in the Henry VIII period and a little bit before and after, telling you how the family began and what happened after Jane Seymour's death and how the family progressed. Finally, 5-star read, my only 5-star read for these 2 months, was Les Miserables from stage to screen, if I can speak properly, by Benedict Nightingale and Martin Palmer. As the title suggests, this is a book that looks at the evolution of the musical Les Miserables from its beginnings through to the recent, or a few years ago now, film version. I already have a book on the history of the musical itself down here somewhere. So some of the information at the start of the book was repeated, but some of it was new. There were some really great production photos, and what I loved were the little pockets with all these extra little posters and tickets and bits and pieces in, which really made it a worthwhile collector's piece. So if you're a musical theatre aficionado, a Les Mis fan, it's definitely a book for you. I actually read my father's copy, but now that I've read it, I would like to get a copy of my own for my collection. So that brings us to the end. It was very short, sharp and get on with it sort of mode today, but that's because I just wanted to get everyone up to date so that I can now pick up and resume normal channel movement and normal uploading. I've got a few I want to film. I've seen a few tags while I was away that people have done that I'd love to film, so over the next few months I'll do those. I'm also hoping to do a few new videos with a friend of mine, which I'll need to get in touch with her about soon. Otherwise, I hope everyone's had a good start to 2018, and I look forward to sharing more channel content with you as the months and weeks progress. And I'll be back very soon with my January reads, so I look forward to seeing you all again then. Bye for now.